He just wanted comfort. She gave him something far more dangerous. In the stillness of a rainy night, their silence spoke louder than words. What began as solace became a fragile sanctuary, and a dangerous truth they could no longer ignore. Welcome to Goddess Foot Confessions. Let's uncover what really happened. The house felt unusually still that night, as if time itself had paused just for me. After a week heavy with exhaustion and silent battles, I sank into the softness of my bed, craving nothing but the escape of sleep. The moonlight spilled through the thin curtains, casting pale shadows that danced lazily across the room's quiet corners. It was the kind of calm I rarely found, a rare treasure wrapped in gentle silence. I'd already slipped into my pajamas, the fabric cool against my skin, and pulled the blanket up to my chin, letting its warmth cradle my weary body. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs was the only other sound, steady and comforting, a lullaby of domestic normalcy. Outside, a soft breeze stirred the curtains just enough to remind me I wasn't alone. Alex had gone to bed hours ago, his presence already folded into the walls, the house marked by his absence in a way that made me ache without words. Even after nearly 20 years, the quiet felt unfamiliar, too large, too hollow. But tonight, the stillness felt different. There was a tension lurking beneath the surface, a subtle charge that teased the edges of my awareness. My heart thudded not with rest, but with a quiet anticipation I couldn't name. Something in the way the moonlight touched the floor, the way the air tasted cool against my skin, whispered that this night wouldn't be like any other. I closed my eyes, willing my mind to slow, but a soft knock at the door pulled me back, sudden and gentle. It was a sound small enough to be ignored, yet it sliced through the silence with unmistakable intent. And just like that, the night shifted. The knock came again, softer this time, like a hesitant whisper against the quiet walls. My eyes fluttered open, the comforting haze of sleep lifting to reveal the dim outline of Alex, standing at the doorway. He looked smaller somehow, tired, uncertain, with shadows playing across his features in the faint hallway light. "Mom," he murmured, his voice barely above a breath. The single word held so much, a fragile plea, a silent question that tugged at the corners of my heart. I patted the bed beside me, the blankets rustling softly as an invitation. He hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his eyes, before he slowly crossed the threshold and slipped beneath the covers. His bare skin was cool against mine, the faint warmth of his breath mingling with the quiet rhythm of the night. As he settled close, I noticed the subtle brush of his foot against my leg, toes curling with a delicate tension I hadn't expected. That simple contact sent a ripple through me, a quiet stirring of feelings tangled between comfort and something unspoken. We lay together in the stillness, the silence between us thick and charged, filled with words neither of us dared to voice. His tired eyes met mine briefly, a flicker of vulnerability hidden beneath his usual strength. I reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead, the soft gesture a balm to the heaviness I sensed in him. And in that tender moment, the world outside slipped away, leaving only the fragile closeness we shared, two souls seeking solace in the quiet dark. The night deepened around us, but the space between us felt impossibly small. Alex lay on his side, facing me, his breath steady yet fragile, as if each inhale was a careful negotiation with the quiet. His eyes, usually so guarded, now reflected a vulnerability that softened the shadows in the room. I could feel the faint warmth of his skin through the thin blanket. His bare foot, tucked close, brushed against my arm once, then twice, deliberate or accidental, I couldn't tell. Each touch sent a subtle shiver up my spine, a whispered reminder that this closeness was unlike any we'd known before. There was something hypnotic in the curve of his ankle, the way the gentle arch caught the dim light filtering through the curtains. I caught myself staring, my breath catching as his toes flexed slowly, almost rhythmically. A strange mixture of protectiveness and something deeper bloomed inside me, and I forced myself to look away before he noticed. The quiet was heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken words and emotions hanging in the space between us. It was as if the night itself held its breath, waiting for something inevitable to surface. I traced the outline of his shoulder with my fingers, a tentative touch that spoke of comfort and reassurance. "Do you want to talk about it?" My voice was barely a whisper, thick with exhaustion and something else, an ache I didn't quite understand. He shook his head slowly, eyes cast downward. "No," he murmured. "I just wanted to be close." That simple confession wrapped around me like a fragile thread, binding us together in the dark. I smiled softly, brushing his hair back again, wishing I could shield him from all the pain and guilt I sensed lurking beneath his calm exterior. Tonight, we shared more than just a bed. We shared a moment suspended between past and future, a fragile intimacy woven from years of love, loss, and silent longing. And as sleep finally claimed us both, the silence between us grew thicker, charged with a promise we had yet to name. The morning light crept softly through the curtains, casting a gentle glow across the room. Alex was still beside me, his breathing deep and even a peaceful mask over the storm I sensed he carried inside. As I watched him, a quiet ache settled in my chest, questions lingering, unasked, hanging between us like fragile glass. When he finally stirred, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, I hesitated before speaking. The words felt heavy, weighted with years of silence. "Do you ever miss him?" I asked quietly, the question trembling on my lips. Alex's eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before: pain, uncertainty, a shadow of guilt. "Sometimes," he admitted softly, "but things weren't good between you two." His honesty caught me off guard. We both knew the fractures in our past, the silent spaces left by his father's absence. But hearing it voiced made the distance feel real in a new way. "Do you ever wonder if things could have been different?" he pressed, voice barely above a whisper. I sighed, the weight of regret settling over me like a familiar shroud. "Maybe," I said softly, "but we can't change the past. All we can do is move forward." His fingers played nervously with the edge of the blanket, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. "Sometimes I wonder if I could have been better," he murmured, the words a fragile confession that pierced through my heart. I reached out, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Alex, none of this was your fault," I said firmly, voice steady despite the emotion swirling inside. "Your father's choices were his own. You didn't do anything wrong." He turned away, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Sometimes it feels like if I had been better, maybe he wouldn't have left." I wrapped my arms around him then, holding him close as the tears slipped quietly down my cheeks. In that embrace, the unspoken burden he'd carried for so long began to lift, replaced by a fragile thread of hope, a promise that no matter what, we would face the future together. The silence that followed was heavy but healing, a quiet acknowledgement of pain shared and love renewed. The weight of our shared confession still lingered in the air, wrapping around us like a delicate veil. We lay tangled in the quiet aftermath, the soft rustling of the sheets the only sound in the dimly lit room. My hand rested lightly on Alex's shoulder, tracing slow, soothing circles. An unspoken reassurance meant as much for me as for him. His breath hitched when my fingers drifted lower, brushing the bare skin near his collarbone. The warmth of his skin under my touch sent an unexpected flutter through me, a tremor I struggled to contain. His body tensed briefly, then relaxed into the rhythm I set, as if seeking comfort in the subtle connection. I stole a glance at his face, illuminated by the pale moonlight filtering through the curtains. His eyes were closed, lashes casting soft shadows on his cheeks. The vulnerability in his expression was striking, so different from the guarded boy I'd known. It was a moment suspended in time, fragile and intimate. My fingers traced a tentative path down his arm, brushing over the smooth curve of his wrist before lingering at the edge of the blanket. His hand twitched lightly, and then, almost hesitantly, it reached out to find mine. Our fingers intertwined, the the simple touch sending a shiver through us both. The silence grew heavier, charged with a tension neither of us dared to name. I became acutely aware of the small spaces between us. The warmth of his breath on my skin, the subtle rise and fall of his chest, the gentle flex of his toes peeking from beneath the blanket. Something stirred deep inside me, a quiet yearning wrapped in confusion and tenderness. The lines between comfort and desire blurred, drawing us closer into a world where words were unnecessary, and every touch spoke volumes. And as we lay there, connected by more than just blood, the night held us in its gentle embrace, waiting, watching, and whispering promises of what might come next. The dawn light crept softly across the room, casting a pale glow over Alex's face as he lay curled beside me. His eyes were closed, but the tension in his jaw betrayed the storm inside. I felt the weight of his unspoken thoughts pressing between us, heavier than the blankets that tangled around our legs. I hesitated, unsure whether to break the silence or let it stretch, giving him space to unravel his pain in his own time. But the quiet gnawed at me, an ache that demanded release. "Alex," I whispered, voice barely more than a breath. "You don't have to carry this alone." His eyes fluttered open, dark and searching. For a moment, he said nothing, just looked at me with a mixture of longing and fear. Then, slowly, he began to speak, the words spilling out in a rush of emotion he'd kept locked away. "It's like there's this part of me that's always waiting for something to change, for him to come back, for things to be different." His voice cracked, raw and fragile. "But I know it won't." I reached out, cupping his face gently, tracing the line of his jaw with a trembling thumb. "It's okay to feel lost," I murmured. "It's okay to grieve, to be angry, to wonder what if. But you're not alone anymore." His fingers curled around mine, gripping tightly. Sometimes I think if I'd been stronger, smarter, better, maybe he wouldn't have left. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the tears welling in my eyes. "You were never the reason. None of this is your fault." The room seemed to shrink around us, the world outside fading into insignificance. We were two souls, raw and exposed, holding onto each other as the weight of years pressed down. In that moment, love became a lifeline, fragile but fierce, and I vowed silently to carry that burden with him, to be the anchor when the past threatened to pull us under. And as the first light of day broke through the window, the heaviness between us began to lift, replaced by a fragile hope born from shared pain and unwavering trust. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains, casting gentle patterns across the room. Alex was still beside me, his breathing calm, his face softened by sleep's embrace. The heaviness of the night seemed to have lifted, replaced by a quiet warmth that settled deep within me. As I watched him, the realization dawned that something had shifted between us. The bond we shared, once defined solely by blood and history, had grown into something more complex, more intimate. It wasn't just the comfort of family. It was a connection threaded with tenderness and unspoken promises. His bare foot peeked from under the blanket, the arch catching the morning light. I found myself drawn to it, the delicate curve, the way his toes flexed slightly, as if reaching for something unseen. My breath hitched for a moment, and I quickly turned my gaze away, chastising myself for the flutter of emotion that stirred within. Breakfast awaited downstairs, but I lingered, savoring the stillness of this new closeness. The house was silent, save for the faint sounds of the waking world beyond the windows. Outside, the day promised nothing extraordinary, yet inside, the air was charged with quiet anticipation. Alex stirred, stretching slowly, and his eyes met mine. There was a softness there now, an openness that hadn't been before. "Morning," he murmured, voice thick with sleep but laced with something deeper. "Morning," I replied, my smile gentle yet tinged with the complexity of our shared night. He shifted closer, and his foot brushed lightly against my leg, a touch that sent a ripple through me. The fragile peace between us felt like both a gift and a challenge, a delicate balance between what was and what might be. And as the day unfolded around us, I knew that whatever path lay ahead, we were no longer simply mother and son. We were something new, something uncharted, bound by a love that defied definition but felt undeniably real. The kitchen smelled of fresh coffee and syrup as I flipped the last pancake, the morning light streaming through the window, casting soft warmth over the room. Alex sat at the table, quietly digging into his breakfast, the usual morning clatter replaced by a gentle stillness that felt fragile, as if we were both holding our breath. His tousled hair fell over his forehead, and I caught him stealing glances at me. Quick, almost shy looks that seemed to search for something unspoken. I met his gaze once, offering a small smile, but quickly looked away, unsure of how to navigate the tension simmering beneath the surface. The space between us was filled with tiny moments, his foot brushing against the leg of my chair, the faint scent of his shampoo mingling with the aroma of toast, the subtle rise and fall of his shoulders as he breathed. Each of these quiet details etched themselves into my mind, weaving a tapestry of intimacy that neither of us dared name. As he reached for his glass, his fingers lightly touched mine, a brief, accidental contact that sent a flicker of heat through me. Neither of us pulled away, but the silence stretched, thick and charged, as if the room itself was aware of the fragile line we were walking. I found myself watching the curve of his neck, the way the morning light softened his features, how his bare feet peeked out from beneath the table. So familiar, yet suddenly charged with new meaning. The thought made my heart quicken, and I forced my eyes back to the plate in front of me. In these small moments, the shift between us was undeniable. We moved through the morning wrapped in a delicate dance of proximity and restraint, each touch, glance, and breath carrying the weight of something profound. And though the day outside promised routine, inside, everything had changed. The days that followed carried a subtle shift, almost imperceptible to anyone but us. The world outside kept turning, life moving forward in its usual relentless rhythm. Yet within the walls of our home, something delicate and fragile was unfolding. Alex and I moved around each other with a new awareness. A glance held a second longer, a casual touch lingering just beyond necessity. The ordinary routines took on layers of meaning, as if every shared breath and whispered silence was part of an unspoken conversation neither dared voice. I noticed how his bare feet would occasionally brush against mine when we sat side by side, sending a quiet pulse through me. The way he'd flex his toes absent-mindedly while lost in thought, the subtle curve of his arch catching the light, small details that suddenly commanded my attention and stirred feelings I hadn't expected. His presence felt closer, more present. Our conversations deepened, often drifting into the realm of emotions previously left untouched, the kind that drew us nearer, even as they unsettled the boundaries we'd once known. I found myself longing for moments when he'd sit near enough for our legs to touch beneath the table, or when his hand would brush mine while reaching for a book. Each of these fleeting contacts wove a thread of intimacy that both comforted and confused me. Though we tried to carry on with the normal rhythms of life, the invisible current between us grew stronger, pulling us into a space where nothing was quite the same. I wondered if he felt it too, the slow unfolding of something deeper, a connection that defied explanation but could not be ignored. And as evening fell each day, I found myself counting the moments until we were alone again, wrapped in that charged silence where words were unnecessary, and every touch spoke volumes. The quiet between us had grown heavier, thicker, an unspoken understanding settling like mist in the corners of the room. Neither of us spoke about what was unfolding, but the way we moved around each other carried a new kind of gravity. It was as if our souls had reached out and touched in the dark, and now we were learning how to exist in that space without breaking. One evening, as we sat side by side on the couch, the flickering light from the television casting soft shadows across our faces, I felt his arm brush against mine. It was a small, almost accidental touch, but it sent a thrill coursing through me, an electric current that made my skin tingle and my breath hitch. He didn't pull away, and neither did I. Our fingers grazed, hesitated, then found each other, intertwining in a slow, deliberate clasp. The room seemed to hold its breath as our hands spoke a language older than words, a quiet promise, a bridge between the familiar and the unknown. His bare foot rested lightly against my leg, the soft curve of his arch warm beneath the thin fabric of my pants. The sensation was both comforting and unsettling, a reminder of how close we had become and how far from ordinary our bond now felt. We exchanged glances, eyes locking with a mixture of fear, longing, and something unspoken but deeply understood. Neither of us dared break the silence, yet in that quiet, the truth between us settled like a soft flame, glowing steady and bright. For the first time, I realized that this was no longer just a moment. This was a turning point, a silent acknowledgement that we were crossing a threshold neither had planned to approach, but both felt irresistibly drawn toward. And as the night deepened around us, our fingers remained entwined, holding fast to the fragile, undeniable connection that was rewriting everything we thought we knew about love, trust, and family. The living room was bathed in the soft glow of the television, flickering images casting gentle shadows on the walls. We sat side by side on the worn couch, the space between us shrinking with every passing moment. The air was thick with quiet tension, charged with all the unspoken feelings that hovered just beneath the surface. Alex shifted slightly, and our arms brushed, light, tentative, electric. I felt my heart quicken, a flutter deep in my chest that I tried to suppress. His bare foot stretched out, the curve of his arch pressing gently against the fabric of my jeans. The sensation was subtle, but it sent a ripple of awareness through me, stirring something fragile and new. We didn't speak much that evening. Words seemed unnecessary when the silence carried so much weight. Instead, we let the flickering light and the steady rhythm of the movie fill the space between us. Every glance, every accidental touch, was charged with meaning. I caught him watching me once, his eyes reflecting a mixture of longing and uncertainty. Our gazes met, and in that moment, the world outside the room faded away. It was just us, two souls navigating the fragile line between love and something unspoken. The warmth of his presence was intoxicating, and I found myself leaning closer, my hand resting lightly on his thigh. He didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers twined with mine, slow and sure. The silence between us grew thicker, a tangible bond that neither of us dared to name, but both felt deeply. As the credits rolled, we remained entwined, the night around us holding its breath. The movie ended, but our story was just beginning, written in the gentle touches, the stolen glances, and the quiet understanding that what we shared was something extraordinary. The room was dim, bathed only in the soft glow of the fading television light. Our fingers remained locked together, a simple gesture that felt heavy with meaning. Each gentle squeeze, each slow stroke of his thumb, sent waves of warmth cascading through me, like a secret language spoken without words. I was acutely aware of every detail. The way his skin felt against mine, the subtle tension in his hand as he sought reassurance, the faint tremor that betrayed his own swirling emotions. There was a vulnerability in him now, one I hadn't seen before, and it pulled at something deep inside me. His bare foot shifted, pressing lightly against my calf. The contact was electric, a spark in the quiet dark that neither of us could ignore. I caught my breath, my eyes flickering to the curve of his arch, the delicate flexing of his toes. Each movement was poetry, a dance of subtle seduction that stirred a longing I was still learning to understand. We sat like that for a long while, fingers intertwined, hearts beating in a silent rhythm that spoke of trust and something more. It wasn't just about closeness. It was about crossing a boundary neither of us had dared approach before. There was no rush, no need to define what was happening. We simply existed in that fragile moment, wrapped in a cocoon of warmth and quiet understanding. And as the night deepened around us, I realized with a mix of fear and hope that whatever path lay ahead, we were walking it together. Two souls bound by an unspoken promise, fingers intertwined, ready to face the unknown. The days after that night carried a quiet newness, an intimacy that wove itself into the fabric of our everyday lives. It wasn't loud or dramatic. Instead, it settled like soft light filtering through curtains, subtle but unmistakable. Alex and I moved through the house with a delicate awareness, the kind that made every glance, every brush of skin, feel charged with meaning. Our touches were lighter now, sometimes a hand resting briefly on a shoulder, sometimes a foot nudging gently against my own beneath the table. These small gestures became our language, intimate and unspoken. One afternoon, as the late sun spilled gold across the floor, I found myself sitting close to him on the couch. His bare feet were bare and relaxed, toes flexing slowly as he absent-mindedly traced patterns on the armrest. I watched, mesmerized by the subtle movements, the curve of his heel, the gentle arch, the way his toes curled just so. My breath caught quietly, and I had to remind myself to look away. He glanced at me, a slow smile tugging at his lips. "You're staring again," he teased softly, voice low and warm. I laughed, cheeks flushing. "I can't help it," I admitted. "There's just something mesmerizing." He shifted closer, the warmth of his body brushing against mine. The room felt smaller, more intimate, as if the world had shrunk to the space we shared. In that moment, the boundaries between us softened even more, replaced by a tenderness that felt both thrilling and frightening. The new intimacy was a fragile thread, weaving us closer, binding us in a way that neither of us fully understood, but both of us craved. And as the sunlight faded into evening, I knew this was only the beginning of something deeper, something impossible to ignore. The sky darkened as soft rain began to patter against the windows, the steady rhythm wrapping the house in a quiet cocoon. Inside, the warmth from the fire flickered across the walls, casting gentle shadows that danced in time with the crackling flames. Alex and I nestled together beneath a thick blanket on the couch, the world outside melting away into a blur of gray and silver. His bare feet rested lightly against my leg, the curve of his arches warm through the fabric, sending a familiar flutter stirring deep within me. I let my fingers trail absently over the top of his foot, the touch gentle but deliberate. His toes flexed softly, and I caught the faintest smile on his lips, eyes closing briefly as if savoring the contact. The rain blurred the world beyond the glass, leaving only the intimacy of the fire-lit room. Our breaths mingling in the quiet, the steady pulse of his heartbeat beneath my hand. The silence grew thick, a language all its own, filled with promises unspoken and desires held just beneath the surface. I rested my head against the back of the couch, eyes tracing the line of his jaw, the soft sweep of his hair falling across his forehead. There was a new vulnerability in him now, a tenderness that beckoned me closer even as it stirred a quiet ache within my chest. He shifted slightly, pressing closer, the warmth of his body radiating against mine. My hand lingered a moment longer on his foot, fingers brushing the smooth skin, savoring the subtle movement of his toes. In the steady hush of the rainy afternoon, time seemed to pause, holding us suspended in a moment both fragile and electric. The connection between us deepened, woven through the soft touches and shared breaths, a quiet affirmation of a bond growing ever stronger. And as the rain whispered its endless song against the windows, I knew there was no turning back from this new path we were walking, one step, one touch, one heartbeat at a time. The firelight flickered softly, painting warm hues across the room as the rain continued its steady song outside. We sat close, wrapped in the same thick blanket, the silence between us humming with a tension both tender and electric. I could feel the steady beat of Alex's heart beneath my hand as it rested lightly on his arm, a quiet reassurance we both needed. His eyes met mine, wide and searching, filled with emotions too complex for words. For a moment, neither of us spoke, caught in the fragile web of shared vulnerability. Then, with a voice barely above a whisper, he broke the stillness. "I love you," he said, his words trembling like a leaf caught in a gentle breeze. "Not just because you're my mom, but because of who you are." The confession hung between us, fragile and undeniable. My breath caught, a mixture of shock, fear, and something deeper, a joy I hadn't dared to imagine. His gaze held a raw honesty, a desperate hope for understanding. I reached out, my fingers brushing his cheek, tracing the lines softly as tears welled in my eyes. "I love you too," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I've always loved you. But this is different." He searched my face, eyes flickering with hope and fear, looking for the reassurance he needed. "I don't know if it's okay or if it's wrong," he admitted, voice fragile. "But I can't help how I feel. I don't know where this will lead," I said gently, "but I know it feels right. It feels real." A small smile spread across his lips, relief flooding his features. "I'm glad you feel that way," he said softly, "because I don't know what I'd do if you didn't." In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, the weight of years lifting as we embraced a truth that was both terrifying and beautiful. We sat in silence, hands entwined, hearts beating in quiet harmony. And as the rain whispered against the windows, I knew our lives had changed forever. The room seemed to hold its breath, every sound fading into the background except for the steady rhythm of our hearts. Alex's eyes searched mine, wide and vulnerable, brimming with a mixture of hope and fear that made my own chest tighten. The air between us was thick with unspoken promises, the weight of everything we'd shared and all that still hung in the balance. Slowly, almost hesitantly, he leaned in. His lips brushed mine in a gentle, tentative kiss, a whisper of a touch that sent a jolt through me, awakening something tender and fierce all at once. The softness of his mouth against mine was both familiar and new, a delicate dance of discovery that left me breathless. His hand found the curve of my neck, fingers tracing light patterns that made my skin tingle. I responded instinctively, wrapping my arms around him, drawing him closer as the kiss deepened, growing in intensity and urgency. It was a release of years of longing, pain, and confusion, a moment suspended in time where nothing else mattered but us. When we finally pulled apart, our foreheads rested together, breaths mingling in the quiet space between. His eyes searched mine again, filled with a warmth that melted away the last traces of doubt. "I never want to let go," he whispered. Neither did I. The world outside the room had vanished, leaving only the two of us wrapped in an embrace that spoke of love, trust, and a future still uncertain but filled with hope. The fire flickered softly, casting gentle shadows as we held each other close, savoring the fragile, beautiful moment. And in that kiss, everything changed. The silence that followed our kiss was profound, filled with a mixture of relief, confusion, and a deep sense of wonder. We sat close, bodies still intertwined, but our minds raced with the weight of what had just happened. The world outside seemed distant, irrelevant compared to the fragile new reality we had stepped into together. I could feel Alex's heartbeat against my chest, steady but racing beneath my fingertips. His breath came in quiet, uneven gasps, mirroring my own tangled emotions. Neither of us spoke at first, letting the moment settle like a delicate thread woven between us, strong yet vulnerable. Questions hovered unspoken. What did this mean? Where would it lead? How could something so beautiful also feel so complicated? The boundaries we once knew had blurred, replaced by a landscape unfamiliar and both thrilling and terrifying. I reached up, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead, trying to find the right words, but finding only silence. Instead, I held him tighter, letting the warmth of our embrace speak for me. We needed time to understand, to breathe, to accept the new truth unfolding between us. The night deepened, wrapping us in its quiet embrace as we navigated the aftermath of our shared confession. Though uncertainty lingered, so did a growing certainty that whatever challenges awaited, we would face them together. And in that fragile stillness, I found hope. The house was cloaked in silence, the only sound the soft rhythm of our breathing mingling in the stillness. Alex and I lay wrapped together beneath the heavy quilt, the warmth between us a fragile shield against the world outside. Every beat of his heart felt like a promise, steady, sure, and deeply grounding. His body curved against mine, familiar yet changed, as if the distance we'd crossed had reshaped the space between us. His bare foot brushed lightly over my calf, the subtle touch sending a quiet shiver through me, awakening a tenderness I hadn't fully allowed myself to feel before. I traced gentle circles on his back, the motion slow and soothing, each movement a silent vow of care and protection. His breath hitched when my fingers brushed closer to his shoulder, a reminder of the intimacy we now shared, fragile, complex, and undeniably real. The night wrapped around us like a velvet cloak, cradling our whispered confessions and unspoken fears. We held each other close, finding solace not just in warmth, but in the undeniable connection that pulsed between us. His head rested lightly against my chest, and I felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing, a calming rhythm that eased the turmoil inside me. In this quiet embrace, the world faded away, leaving only the two of us, tethered by something deeper than words, stronger than fear. And as sleep finally claimed us both, I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together, bound by love, trust, and the gentle strength of our night embrace. The days unfolded with a gentle rhythm, each one bringing us closer in ways both small and profound. The shift in our relationship was no longer a secret whispered only in the quiet hours of night. It had woven itself into the fabric of our daily lives, subtle yet undeniable. We navigated this new territory side by side, learning each other's rhythms and boundaries with a tenderness born from trust. Our touches were softer, our glances more knowing, as if a silent language had blossomed between us, one made of fleeting brushes of skin, shared smiles, and moments where words fell away. Alex's bare feet often found their way to me, resting against my leg or curling near mine beneath the table. Each contact was a reminder of the intimacy growing between us, a connection that felt both thrilling and terrifying in its depth. We shared quiet mornings filled with easy conversation and evenings wrapped in comfortable silence. The house, once echoing with unspoken tension, now felt alive with the warmth of our presence. Yet beneath the comfort, there was an undercurrent of complexity, an awareness of the world beyond these walls, with its judgments and questions we hadn't yet faced. Still, we held fast to the quiet strength between us, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, we had each other. The bond we were building was more than love. It was a sanctuary, a refuge from the storms of the past, and a promise for the future. And in that shared space, we found not just companionship, but the courage to grow together, step by tender step. There was a quiet tension that settled between us, an undercurrent that neither of us dared to name aloud. The warmth we shared was unmistakable, but the world outside pressed in with unyielding judgment, casting shadows over the fragile closeness we had built. Yet, in the privacy of our sanctuary, something deeper stirred, a yearning both thrilling and forbidden. Alex's bare feet would brush against mine in the most unguarded moments, his toes flexing softly, the delicate curve of his arch pressing gently, as if seeking reassurance. Each touch sent ripples through me, awakening a desire wrapped in tenderness and restraint. It was a dance of silent longing, a language we spoke without words. His eyes often lingered on me longer than before, intense, searching, filled with emotions we both felt but couldn't fully explain. And when our gazes met, the air would thicken, the silence between us growing heavier, charged with possibilities that both frightened and exhilarated. I found myself drawn to the softness of his skin, the subtle movements of his feet, the gentle brush of his heel against my leg during quiet evenings. These moments were laden with meaning, a slow unfolding of something that defied convention but felt undeniable. Despite the fears, the doubts, and the knowledge of what was forbidden, we surrendered to the pull between us. It was a yearning that could not be silenced, a connection that transcended the boundaries set by the world, weaving us closer with every shared breath and every tender, lingering touch. And as we navigated this delicate balance, I knew that what we shared was both fragile and fierce, an unbreakable bond born from forbidden yearning. The quiet moments between us grew rich with meaning, filled with tender gestures that spoke louder than words. It was in the subtle brush of his bare foot against my leg, the slow flexing of his toes as he settled beside me, and the gentle weight of his heel pressing lightly when our legs touched. Each movement was a delicate caress, a secret language of closeness and trust. One evening, wrapped in the soft glow of the lamp, I watched as Alex removed his shoes, setting them aside with a familiar ease. His feet were bare, smooth, and pale against the dark carpet. I felt a magnetic pull toward them, the graceful curve of his arches, the slight curl of his toes, details I hadn't noticed before but now found impossible to ignore. Without thinking, my hand brushed lightly over his ankle, the contact brief but charged. His breath caught, and I caught the flicker of surprise in his eyes. The silence that followed was thick with anticipation, both of us caught in the delicate tension of the moment. Our proximity felt electric. I noticed how his toes twitched softly against my skin, the faint pulse of warmth connecting us in an unspoken embrace. The room seemed to shrink until it was just the two of us, suspended in a quiet bubble where time slowed and every sensation was amplified. In those tender gestures, we found a new kind of intimacy, one that transcended explanation and defied the world outside. It was a silent promise, a reassurance that despite everything, we were together in this fragile, beautiful space. And as the night deepened, our unspoken bond grew stronger, woven through the soft touches and the quiet longing that lingered beneath the surface. The outside world loomed large, its presence an unspoken challenge we could no longer ignore. Each day brought reminders of the judgments and whispers waiting just beyond our doorstep, realities that threatened to unravel the fragile sanctuary we'd built in the quiet corners of our home. Yet, within these walls, Alex and I held fast to each other, our connection a shield against the uncertainty. We shared stolen moments, brief touches, lingering looks, the warmth of bare feet pressed softly together beneath the table. Reminders that love, in its many forms, could be a quiet rebellion. The tension between desire and restraint grew, but so did our resolve. We navigated the delicate balance of honoring our feelings while guarding against the harsh gaze of a world that might never understand. There were times when fear crept in, whispers of doubt that clouded the moments of tenderness. But in those moments, a glance, a touch, or the curve of his arch against my skin would remind me why we were willing to face the unknown. Together, we forged a silent pact to protect what we had, to nurture the bond that defied convention but felt undeniably true. And though the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenge, we found strength in the quiet certainty of each other's presence. For in facing the world together, we discovered a courage deeper than fear, a love that could withstand even the harshest storms. The days had grown shorter, and the world outside remained a constant reminder of the challenges we faced. Yet inside our home, something resilient was blossoming, a bond forged not just from shared moments, but from unwavering trust and acceptance. Alex and I moved through each day with a quiet confidence born of this connection. His bare feet often found their way to mine, resting lightly, curling softly, sending waves of comfort that anchored me in the present. Those simple touches were a lifeline, a silent promise that no matter the world's judgment, we had each other. The weight of uncertainty still lingered, but it no longer crushed us. Instead, it sharpened our resolve, deepening the intimacy that had grown between us in ways words could never capture. We shared laughter in the quiet mornings, comfort in the dark nights, and strength in the unspoken understanding that bound us closer than ever. Our love was a refuge, fragile yet fierce, tender yet unyielding. Even as the outside world whispered its doubts, within these walls, we built a sanctuary where our truth could live and breathe, free from fear or shame. And as I watched him, the man he was becoming, I knew that this bond was unbreakable, rooted in love, nurtured by vulnerability, and strengthened by the courage to be wholly ourselves. Together, we faced the future, not as separate souls, but as one. The dawn broke softly, casting warm light across the quiet room where Alex and I lay side by side. The journey we'd traveled, the twists, the fears, the tender moments, had led us here, to a place both uncertain and full of promise. There was no grand declaration, no need for labels or explanations. Instead, there was simply the deep, unshakable knowledge that we had found something rare, a connection that transcended convention and fear, rooted in trust, love, and unwavering support. His bare foot rested gently against mine, the familiar curve and softness a comforting anchor in the newness of everything. Our fingers intertwined as naturally as breathing, a silent vow that whatever came next, we would face it together. Outside, the world awaited with all its complexities and challenges, but inside, we had created a sanctuary, a space where love could grow unbounded, where two souls could walk forward hand in hand. The future was unwritten, a blank canvas stretched wide with possibility. And as the morning light filled the room, I felt a quiet hope blooming deep within me. This was not the end. It was a new beginning, one built on courage, honesty, and the unbreakable bond between us. Together, we would navigate whatever lay ahead, step by careful step, heart to heart.